minutes and 30 seconds. Thank you.
Much, Mr. Vice President. I have an impossible task to sum up my response in that time, so I will be selective, but I'm open to discussing with you, of course, outside the Council. First of all, I would like to thank all the delegations who have expressed their support for my mandate, and particularly, and also a number of them who have extended invitations to me to engage with them, particularly from Africa, Zambia, Mozambique, Ghana, and also, of course, Philippines and others. I'm always ready, and I will certainly be looking all of you up. There are a number of questions. I've tried to group them. First, on the situation of journalists and how can we actually support the safety of journalists, how can we strengthen media? Well, there are a number of ways to do it. First of all, it's about ending impunity for crimes against journalists. Journalism is not a crime, and the state has to be much more responsive to protecting journalists, but also following up when they are attacked. Secondly, as I say in my report, political leaders are actually tarnishing the reputation of journalists, have attacking them with false claims of being liars and foreign agents and so on, which actually enhances their insecurity. That is then seen as an excuse to attack a journalist. Thirdly, and most importantly, I think governments need very seriously to look together with the international community and perhaps the Council, certainly UNESCO, to look to see how do we strengthen the media sector, which is an essential sector. It is not a commercial, news is not a commercial commodity. It is actually a human right, and therefore states need to see how to strengthen it against certain unfavorable financial trends, but also against the way in which digital technology is coming into this area. There have been some questions about companies. I think, how do we strengthen companies? Well, first of all, we need to make sure, governments need to make sure through smart regulation that companies are complying with the human rights standards in accordance with the UN guiding principles. In the context of transparency, that is extremely important. Algorithmic transparency. The Digital Services Act, for example, includes provisions on that, requiring companies to have that algorithmic transparency. I would also call for access to researchers who can actually use the data to measure the performance of companies. There have been some questions about what legal and non-legal means can be used to address such issues of disinformation. Well, law is only one tool in the toolbox, and it should be kept, particularly criminal law should be kept for the most egregious cases. But beyond that, there is a lot more that can be done. I've talked about smart social media regulation. Digital media and information literacy is extremely important, and so is independent fact-checking. And one of that aspect of independent fact-checking is, of course, free media. Encouraging free, diverse, independent media is also important. In the context of elections, there was one good practice that I would mention, and that is pre-election stress tests were done by a number of companies with governments in Europe before the European elections last year, and it is becoming more and more something that is being done by some governments. And I think that is a good thing, that you sit down with companies, you get them to look at your systems, and they look at what you have, you discuss it, and you figure out where you might be attacked. And that is also very relevant for foreign interference in elections. There was a discussion, I think India mentioned and questioned my use of sources. Well, I received submissions from 26 governments. India was not one of them. So if you feel that if you are doing something that is useful for my report, please send me your information. And secondly, even better, please invite me to your country so that I can actually see what is happening there. And you can be assured, as you've heard from the Philippines and Zambia today, that I will certainly do a fair job of that. There are, incidentally, examples of good work being done by Indian NGO coalitions, because they did send submissions to me. Let me now quickly look at a few other issues if I have time. Okay, let's see now. There was a discussion about youth. How do we protect young people, first-time voters who are particularly susceptible to disinformation. Digital media information literacy is an extremely important area of study for young people. They are skilled. They have digital skills, but not necessarily digital literacy. I would also say we need to look at influencers. Influencers tend to influence young minds much more, and some of them have millions of followers, but they have no obligation to truth, no obligation to even admit if they have any affiliations with others or if they're receiving money from someone else to push a particular agenda. So I think that is an area where some rules should be developed, both for self-regulation but also by companies to check what to do. Argentina was worried about indirect censorship and a single narrative developing. Certainly, that is an issue for worrying. But at the same time, I do not think it is appropriate that freedom of expression be treated as an absolute right. International law defines freedom of expression as a very expansive right, very broad right, but it does require prohibition when advocacy of hatred becomes incitement to violence. And it's extremely important that governments recognize incitement not as a right, but as a threat to human right. Gaza. Thank you very much for raising the issue of Gaza. As you know, I produced a report for the UN General Assembly last year, and I hope that all those who are supporting freedom of expression here will also look at that report and will discuss with me how we can strengthen the right of those who wish to protest on what is happening in Gaza. Let me see what else I have here now. Yes, I think there was some discussion about how to measure real progress. I think one of the NGOs asked, how do we measure progress? I think there are international processes, such as the UPR, our own country visits, the treaty body reports. These are external ways of measuring progress, and your contribution as civil society helps to ensure that we get a full picture of what is happening from all stakeholders, and I would encourage you to engage with that. There are a number of cases that were mentioned. I will not repeat them here, but I have intervened on them with the respective governments, and I hope that the governments will reconsider their action on cases, particularly of someone like Jimmy Lai, who has been, at his age, for too long in pre-trial detention and who does not deserve to be prosecuted at all. Finally, let me say that I appreciate the interventions that have made on the Philippines. There will be a side event organized next week by NGOs. I will be attending that, and I look forward to discussing with you more about what is happening there. A quick look at my notes to see if I have missed anything. I think I have been fairly comprehensive, but as I said, this is an important area. There's lots and lots of material in my report and other reports on this particular issue. It's a difficult, complex area, and I think the best thing is to actually have multi-stakeholder dialogue. And I would encourage the Human Rights Council, not here we have civil society and we have states, but that the Council should use an opportunity to invite platforms into this venue as well, so that there can be truly a multi-stakeholder discussion about how to protect freedom of expression, one of the most valuable rights, a bridging right on which many other rights depend. How do we jointly work together to strengthen it and make digital technology a boon rather than a threat? Thank you very much for your support once again, and I look forward to working closely with all champions of freedom of expression.